Welcome to Boil the Frog Slowly, a radio program that goes where corporate media stops, where each week we ask the questions: are politics hazardous to your health? Are the decisions and incremental changes being made by government and industry creating health problems? What are they? Why don't you know about them? What can you do about it? Not only do we ask the questions, we furnish answers with unparalleled documentation, research, studies, and guests from around the globe, with proof that unequivocally show that yes, politics are hazardous to your health, and you had better be informed before it's too late. Boil the Frog Slowly. A cute name? No. It's what's happening right now to you and me and the rest of the world as we placidly float in a slowly simmering pot of subtle changes. And those who hold the recipe to this agenda count on the fact that we won't notice the heat until we're sufficiently boiled, unable to resist. I'm Pat.
And I'm Sebastian.
And today we're stirring the pot. Thanks for joining us. Sebastian, another great day with you.
Yes, it is.
And our guest. Today we have Sue Brinchman, director of the Center for Electrosmog Prevention in San Diego, California. She is a strong opponent against smart meters, and she's here today to explain why smart meters are an example of corporate greed and how these are harming people, not only in San Diego, but throughout the world. So welcome to the show, Sue.
Yeah, welcome, Sue.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you for joining us. Sue, I watched your short video on your website, electrosmogprevention.org, and I wish there were more people like you who have what it takes to stand outside carrying a huge two-sided sign and giving live interviews about the dangers of smart meters. So if you would, just take us back to that day. Why did you go? Are you EH sensitive? And what was the response?
Yes, I'm now electrosensitive, or sometimes they call it electro-hypersensitive. I never was before until I had a smart meter, actually two smart meters put on my property in, I think it was May 2010. And what happened was I didn't understand, as most people, that this was anything different than the utility meters that I had previously. I just thought we were getting new ones. And the gas and electric company came around and replaced them. And they mentioned that they were smart meters because I just went outside and I said, "What are you doing?" Putting in smart meters. I said, "Oh, okay." And that was the end of it. I didn't think any more about it because I didn't know anything about smart meters. And so within weeks, and then over a period of 6 months, I started to develop very odd sensations. However, I didn't associate them with the smart meters, or I didn't even know what they were from or what they could be called, except that I couldn't sleep at night. Even my husband and I were getting like 1 hour sleep some nights. It was very unusual for us. I was getting headaches. I came down with quite a few skin cancers. I was getting dizzy. I had some nausea developing, and then over the period of 6 months, it gradually started to come to my attention that this was worse when I was near a computer or a cell phone. And so all of a sudden I had sort of like the light bulb went off, and I'm like, wow, what do those have in common? They have perhaps some kind of radiation in common. I didn't know much, but I knew that. And so I called an environmental physician that I know here locally. I had used him years before, like a decade before, when I had been exposed to mold in the school that I was working in, because I'm a retired teacher, and I had some problems with toxic mold. And I called him and I said, why am I getting sick when I use my cell phone and I want to sit in front of the computer? All of a sudden, I can't do it. And I described my symptoms to him, and he asked a few more questions. He said, well, are you having any ringing in the ears? I said, yes, I'm having ringing in my ears. Like, I didn't even associate these things like as a constellation of symptoms. Are you having any pain in your ears? Yes, I'm having pain in my ears. So, we went through a series of questions, and I had some sinus pain, heart palpitations, some weakness, poor concentration, some memory problems, things that I just thought maybe I'm getting old. At that point I was about, in my late 50s. So I'll say second half of my 50s, and so I was thinking, this is probably, I'm just getting old. This is weird, but maybe that's what's going to happen. And so, but the doctor said to me, or he asked the question, when did you get a smart meter put on your house, or do you have one, and when did it happen? Because he thought I probably had one because they were deploying them throughout San Diego County at that time, and almost everybody had received one. And so he said that the smart meter could have something to do with this, and that many of his patients were coming in with similar complaints, and he himself was electrosensitive, and he was having problems with his smart meter. And so he knew a lot about wireless and health also, which I knew really nothing about, except that I knew that it wasn't great for your health to hold the cell phone up to your head. That's about the extent of what I knew about it at the time. Anyway, so I told him that 6 months before I'd had the smart meter put in, and then I started thinking back, and that's when the symptoms started. These weird things started happening to me and to some other members of the family. But I think I was a little bit more susceptible because I had had the toxic mold exposure 10 years previous, and I had an inflammatory, and it was improving, but I had an inflammatory condition that predisposed me to react more strongly. And I might add that the smart meter, the electric panel and the smart meter was right behind my headboard, and my head was just inches away from the smart meter, which is like the worst place you could ever have a smart meter on your house. And so I was getting the equivalent, which I learned later, of the radiation of the exposure of 160 cell phones. Wow. While I slept. And I would even go and read in bed. So I was in there longer than just when I was sleeping. If I didn't feel well, I would go lay in my bed like, other people do. So the thing is making me sick, and I'm laying right next to the smart meter. That shows how ignorant I was about it. I had no idea that I should avoid it and not go near it and try to get it off my house. So the doctor recommended that he goes, oh, well, no problem. Come in and see me. We'll write a letter to the gas and electric company, and we'll ask for an accommodation based on my earlier problems with a toxic mold, and they will, take it off and replace it with the old meter. I was thinking, gee, this is great, I'll do that. And so I went in, he wrote the letter, I sent it in, and they refused to take it off, which absolutely stunned me. I brought tears to my eyes. I kept rereading the letter that they sent, and they said that they were required to put them on. The federal government required, these smart meters on the house, which was a lie. And they were required by the state to put them on, which was also a lie, and that they could not remove it. So I was just, after I got sort of regrouped from being stunned by someone knowing that I was becoming ill from a device they put on my house, the gas and electric company had no mercy for that, and there was no solution. I called everybody and their brother and the federal government and the state, and I found out what the truth was, that it wasn't required, and that it was the choice of the utility to put these on. And then I realized, after lobbying them for another 4 or 5 months, I realized that I had to do something about this, that I wasn't going to just, at this point I was not using that bedroom, so now we can't use the master bedroom, and I was sleeping on the couch because I had to get away from that smart meter because I realized that I was getting sick when I got near it. It was stronger, and the doctor said to reduce all my exposures so that my body could settle down from having this strong exposure. My immune system would settle down if I stopped going near that, if I got out of that room, and if I also, at the same time, stopped using anything that was wireless, don't use the microwave. I mean, it was a real adjustment for me because I was just like any other, American with some degree of, wireless gadgets and using the microwave occasionally in the house. So I had to, figure out how to live my life sort of the way I did in the old days before they invented these things, and still be able to do some of the things I needed to do, like use a computer. So now I used a shielded computer. I've got wired internet, got rid of the Wi-Fi. But those things hadn't bothered me, that I could feel. I could not feel anything from them, and I felt okay before the smart meters were put in. But after they were put in, then that's when my body sort of sensitized to the radiation, to the extreme pulsed radiation that I was, exposure, which is, it pulses radiation every second. I found out, even though the company said it did not, they were forced during some proceedings that we eventually joined. I created a nonprofit to do battle with the state government on this issue. So I wanted the Public Utility Commission in our state to order the utilities to allow people like myself who didn't want the smart meter on the house to be able to get it off. And so in the course of those proceedings, we found out that they had been lying about many things and that the pulsed radiation was occurring every second. And pulsed radiation is very bioactive and more damaging to cells and to health than continuous wave radiation. I knew nothing about all this before, but in the state of California, anyway, we kind of joined up once I started the Center for Electrosmog Prevention and hooked up with other activists that were fighting smart meters nationwide and in California, and had been doing that for a couple of years before I was even aware of this. Then, we found out that, what the utilities were saying, and it's pretty much a mantra that they must learn, they must be trained, in a central location, I would say, to use the exact same words. If they say it's not harmful, it's safe, there's a tiny amount of radiation that comes out, like only, maybe once or twice a day for a nanosecond. It's like a small little burst, and it's nothing like using a cell phone all day or having Wi-Fi in your house, or they'll minimize the extent of the radiation exposure, and what eventually in the course of the proceedings at the California Public Utility Commission, which is similar to court proceedings, the under discovery, sort of, that the administrative law judge ordered the utilities to to reveal exactly how these smart meters worked and when they sent out signals, which is what produces the emissions of the radiation. They are signaling every second to each other. There's and there are different types of smart meters. They may not even call them smart meters, but anything that is wireless, whether a truck comes around and reads it, or with a gadget inside that, a meter that reads the smart meter from the truck, or whether it is a mesh network, which is what we have in California, and many other places have it, where the meters are all talking to each other constantly, and then they send the data through all the different meters, and then they, by communicating, sort of like a string of Christmas lights communicating with each other, and then they go to the last one at the end that's near a cell tower, and then that person has a collector meter, and it gets all the data gets sent to the cell tower from there, and then from the cell tower to the company. So, there's a lot of, they wouldn't tell you, like if you just called them up and asked these questions, they would not tell you what was going on. You get all kinds of answers or no answer. But when the the administrative law judge, demanded to know how these things work, that's how we got really got the goods on them and could see.
Well, what I'm curious to find out is during that process, at that point, were you actually able to find out exactly what they're emitting and how many transmitters each meter had in it? Because like Jerry Flynn did a very excellent presentation, and he talked about how a lot of these meters have two transmitters, but they only tell you there's one.
Yes, there are two transmitters in the ones out here, yes.
And is there a way of finding out exactly how many transmitters and exactly what frequencies, what intensities, and exactly what we're being exposed to officially?
Yes, we did find that out through the process of that administrative law judge's order, and we do have that report on our website, and so yeah, we found all of that out exactly because we had a meeting in I think it was September of 2011. There was a meeting at the California Public Utility Commission, which was like a big yelling match between the people who were, participants in the proceeding. It was actually pre-opt-out proceeding. It was more like I guess you could call it was sort of a fact-finding meeting, and to meet with people who are concerned about smart meters and so on, and with the state commission that regulates the utilities, and the utility representatives. And so when they were, lying to the people in the meeting and to the public, because it was on the internet, you could see it, the live streaming video. People were standing up that were concerned about smart meters, and they were saying, "Hey, wait a minute. We're measuring these meters. We can measure the radiation, the pulses coming out of these meters constantly or near constant, like they're pulsing every second. Like, how can you say that they only do that once or twice a day? Because we can measure it. We filmed this. I mean, people were getting really riled up, and that's at that point during that meeting, which went on for hours, arguing back and forth. The judge said she wanted to know. She's a parent of a couple of children, and she was started to look and act concerned about the safety of the smart meters, and she ordered that reports from all three of the major utilities in the state of California that have very broad regions that they serve, and one of them was San Diego Gas and Electric, the one that provides service here, then Pacific Gas and Electric, and Southern California Edison was the third. So they all produced, very specific reports, very extended ones, and that's how we began to find out the details. But you could measure it and you could see it before that, but that you really didn't have any specific information. So I think that was probably the first time in the United States that anybody had information about these types of meters and systems, which are being used. Those same types of meters and systems are being used throughout America and Canada, and there's a few variations. But
how did the judge react once the truth came out and it became obvious utilities were blatantly lying?
Well, I would say that I think that there in our California Public Utility Commission, which has commissioners that run it, some of them, like the president of the commission, was the CEO of Southern California Edison for quite a long time, like 4 or 5 years, and they have a tendency to take people who have affiliations with industry or have been working for the utilities, and the governor appoints them to that commission, and so they hire people who have previously worked for the utilities to supervise and oversee the utilities through the commission. So it's like this revolving door. So we don't have a California Public Utility Commission that's acting the way it is supposed to in a perfect world that isn't corrupt. Mm-hmm. So we have a widely recognized corrupted Public Utility Commission that is, has conflicts of interest, to the sky. And so I feel that, personally, that the judge was pressured and eventually was singing the song that they wanted her to sing, and backing off from her concerns. Although they did come up with, because of the public clamor, because people, especially people in Northern California, were organizing, they were having protests. I mean, some of them were actually blocking trucks going out to deploy smart meters and, joining hands across the road and blocking them. And, there was civil disobedience and just, peaceful protests going on about the smart meters. The people by the hundreds were attending the public utility commissions. They were flooding them, and they were one after the other having their minute of time to speak and telling how sick they were from the smart meters that had been put in, the ones that had received them, which was most of them by that point, most of us. And there was so much pressure. And then they had 57 municipalities, including 12 counties, and our counties are the size of states, other states. So, states like the size of Ohio, we had 12 counties that took a position against smart meters. They did not want smart meters in their counties after studying them with their health departments, with their attorneys, with, the powers that be that know something in the county. They didn't want to make people sick, and there were other aspects like causing fires. Smart meters can cause fires and catch fire and cause house fires. They just didn't want them. They felt they were hazardous. And so 12 counties and a total of 57 towns, cities, and counties in the state of California, which was huge amounts of pressure on the PUC. So they gave us an opt-out, which was not sufficient and which they charged money for. But by May of 2012, they gave us the options that we'd been seeking, which it took 2 years after the smart meters were put on my house to actually be able to get it off through this opt-out, they call it, so that a person who is paying the bill can get their meter that belongs to the utility, but that measures their use for gas and electricity off the property. And so, that's in May of 2012. That's when I was able to get those two off the property. But that does not take care of the neighbors' smart meters, which affect you. They have strong signals that can pass right through your house. And, the closer you are to them, the worse off you are. But some people are really close to their neighbors' smart meters. We have small pieces of property here in California. And so if you're close to, some people have like just a few feet from, they've got a window just a few feet from their neighbor's smart meter, and the neighbor doesn't opt out. So it's not like a total solution. We want a ban on them. And the commissioners ordered that. And that is happening in some other locations throughout the United States and Canada where they are allowing what are called opt-outs.
So I'm really interested to make this correlation, as you in the beginning spoke, that you had mold toxicity exposure early on prior to this. And now we're talking about, yes, your smart meter is off, but your neighbor's is not, and people are living in close proximity to other homes that have that. And I really want to make this point to our listeners. I recently interviewed a Dr. William Ray from the Environmental Health Center in Dallas, where they actually have a clinic there. People go for weeks and months to kind of detox from environmental pollutions such as mold, diesel fumes, petrochemicals, things like carpeting in people's homes. So that if you have any other prior sensitivities, this electrosmog, these smart meters, these wireless devices are going to exacerbate those and create this EH sensitivity much quicker than it would for someone who may not have had any type of environmental pollution problem in the past. And I'm really glad that your doctor was able to connect those dots, because most would not have. So I think this is a very strong point for people to understand that if anything in the past, if they've had any kind of allergies in the past to whatever, they need to make this link quicker rather than later.
The American Academy of Environmental Medicine, which Dr. Ray is a part of, is a member of, has taken a position against smart meters, and basically they are saying that they listed a wide range of medical conditions in this position statement that they issued in July of 2012, and it had to do with people with heart problems, with immune system disorders, with diabetes, with just such a wide range of areas like vision problems,
Yes.
hearing problems. If you're pregnant, children, I mean, just it's almost. I mean, when you read their list, there's almost no one left in America that doesn't have one of those. And they recommend that they do not have a smart meter on their house. They specifically said that those populations with these pre-existing medical conditions or susceptibilities should not have a smart meter, and that the smart meter and exposure to electrosmog pollution may be causing. They're warning doctors that it could be causing the condition to begin with.
Our government is not doing any epidemiology studies. There's no attention being paid to the raw data that's out there right now, ready to be looked at, and it's just being ignored.
We're not getting any help. It's like no one's home when you call.
He's actually more than just a lobbyist. Dr. George Carlo went into detail in his book about Tom Wheeler's involvement. I mean, if you wanted to point the finger at anyone that had the most involvement on why we're at where we're at right now, you can look at Tom Wheeler. He directly made sure that the DNA damage evidence that was produced early on was kept quiet.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really concerned about the DNA damage too, because not just with respect to cancer, but with respect to any other further implications of that that will may affect generations.
Absolutely.
And now the other another aspect of this is that. And we've been fighting the smart meters mostly. We inform the public about the other sources of electrosmog and hope that they will take steps to reduce their use of it. But the smart meters are not voluntary. They force, the way they do it, they force them on you. Your utility will come one day and just install one. They won't even tell you. It could happen when you're at work. And, you may never even know that there's been a change. Most people don't. I mean, how many people think about their electric meter? I didn't even know which one was the gas and which one was the electric meter before. I had no idea. Never had a reason to know. And so, it's so insidious, and they are basically forcing this on you. If you want to have energy use in your house, gas and electric, then you have to have one of these.
And water, by the way.
And water, yes. And if you don't want that meter, then you can go without gas, electricity, and water. And some people have actually done that. And I was sort of, I just couldn't figure out how I could live without those things in a city environment. I was, I'm not out in the country where I could maybe figure something out. And it takes a lot of money to set up a solar system that's off the grid, and it's very complicated. And they wouldn't even issue a permit in my town for that. No one is off the grid in my town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're making it so you cannot get off the grid, and we've heard that recently they've actually forced digital AMR meters on people's solar panels.
Yes, but even people with solar are sometimes being told that they have to have the smart meter. That's particularly if they are on the grid solar. I think if you're off the grid, then you're not going to have a meter because you're making your own electricity and you're just using it for yourself. And you're off the grid. That's what that means. So, but that just wasn't a choice for me. So at this point, I'm even with the smart meters off the property, the gas and electric, I'm still left electrosensitive. My immune system, I think, has quieted down. Like I'm not as sensitive as I was before, but I'd say I'm moderately, whereas before it was severe. But I have to avoid Wi-Fi, and that is a real problem because they're putting Wi-Fi everywhere.
Yeah, once
Doctor's office,
Yep.
like 10,000 times the recommended amount that I can deal with.
There's nowhere to go anymore.
Once you're sensitized, then you can't go anywhere. I just told Sebastian I was at my mom's doctor's office yesterday for 3 hours, and I bring my meter with me. The parking lot, we're at like 5 volts per meter. Inside, we're at way over 6 volts per meter, and everybody's kind of zombieing around, working in there, and nobody's aware of this. And by the time I got out, I couldn't even work the rest of the day. I came home, and I told my husband, I said, I think I'm going to have a heart attack.
Yeah.
I was just shaking, and my heart was racing, and I couldn't think.
It interferes with my heart rate also.
Yeah.
I totally relate to that, and it's scary. Like one time my heart was out of rhythm on and off for 3 weeks, and that was after I went to the public library, which had off the charts.
Yep.
I was measuring in the public library for our website. I was trying to, show what it was like in there, and I wasn't expecting the numbers I got, and just spending a half hour in there, made my heart.
The libraries were recently forced to upgrade by the federal government, so they've actually increased the intensity of their Wi-Fi in libraries across the country.
Yeah.
Oh, I believe it. Ours are really, really high here. And now, I did want to just say that, what steps can people take if they don't have a smart meter yet? And if you want to find out if you have one, you can just go outside and look at the meter. I wouldn't get too close to it, just in case you have one. But if it's digital on the outside, then you have a smart meter. If it's got little dials, generally speaking, you probably don't have a smart meter. If it's the old looking and has dials going across in a row, then it's that's for the electric meters. Then that would not.
Just a heads up, I have seen digital meters that have the dials on them, so that can be a little confusing for people.
Generally,
The best way to know is to get a meter that actually reads the frequencies, and so you know exactly what you're dealing with.
yes, that, or you can also contact the utility company and look at their website too. And usually they're bragging that they have smart meters, or that they have the benefits of the being on the smart grid and the smart meters and so on. But now some of them are wising up and they're using different names so that you won't, because they know that public opinion is against smart meters, so they're calling them by different names, AMR, AMI, and they've got an assortment. But basically, if it's wireless, that's what I would refer to as a smart meter. If it's wireless, it could be an earlier generation one where they're driving around in the truck and reading it, or it could be the mesh network type. But what can people do about it? I feel that, we have to, it can get pretty overwhelming in today's world, with all the different things that we're exposed to that could be hazardous. At a certain point you might just give up and say, I can't do anything about this, just have to live with it. But in this case, this is really worth taking action on, and I recommend, like I did, starting an organization. It can be informal. Get involved with the State Public Utility Commission. Get some proceedings started that allow opt-outs in your state. Try to work on, banning the smart meters. Inform your local governments, local city and county governments, because that's what brought pressure on the state in California to obtain the opt-out to begin with. That was one of the main things that helped. So they can take a position against smart meters being deployed or continued to be deployed or to be used in your town or county. And, you can learn more about them if you do web searches. Go to our website, electrosmogprevention.org, and you can also do smart meters in health. Reasons to say no to smart meters. That's another search you can do. I've got something I wrote about that will turn up, and many other places have written, reasons to say no to smart meters. Also, like in Australia, and there's Canadian groups and other state groups. But you need a state group in Ohio, like a Stop Smart Meters Ohio
We do.
group.
Yeah, we need one in Ohio.
Yeah.
And then you can have local groups like, let's say, Stop Smart Meters Dayton or Stop Smart Meters Columbus, where you network together and you're working together with that state group to apply pressure to inform the people of the state and to apply pressure to the PUC and to the utilities. Some people have a municipal utility where it's just run by the city, and then there's other ones, and those may be more easily influenced depending upon whether they have taken grant money to implement the smart meters. They may have already, bit from the poison apple. I don't know. But, informing people, taking out ads is another way to do it. We've taken out ads in various newspapers and mentored groups that took out ads, and like in Sedona, Arizona, informed the populace where maybe there's one or two people who realize that these are dangerous and, may cause fires and also have security problems and privacy issues and produce higher bills, by the way, the smart meters do. But anyway, just a handful new, and then when you take out these ads and you go maybe door to door with flyers and talk to people, give presentations at the town council meeting that sometimes they're televised, all of a sudden you've got hundreds of people that are aware and taking action, and then you coordinate your efforts, get it in the media. It really helps for people to be aware, because then you can apply pressure to either not have these installed if they're not there to begin with, or to sometimes, like in Canada, they took out 100,000 of them because they were causing fires, and so I think it was British Columbia, but anyway, wherever in Canada recently, they last summer they had the 100,000 smart meters removed.
Now, Sue, you succeeded in putting pressure on the Public Utilities Commission to allow an opt-out. Now, my question to you is that in writing permanent forever? And how much is the opt-out fee that you have to pay?
Well, in May 2012, the opt-out was an interim opt-out that they allowed, and it was in writing. It was a part of a proceeding that where people had been asking for this, and a proceeding had opened up to consider it, and then the administrative law judge made a recommendation, and then the commissioners approved an interim opt-out, which now has become what I would call a probably permanent opt-out. They left some loopholes in it, so it's not as permanent as the language is not as permanent as what I would really like to see, but it appears a lot more permanent, and the fees are depending upon whether you have low income or you are not considered low income by the utility company. You can they charged fees to discourage people from opting out. They definitely studied this, and they came up with the number $75 was going to deter people, so they used that number, $75, to sign up for the smart meter opt-out and have a different billing system set up, and then you pay $10 a month for the meter reader to come out and read your meter.
And that fee was already worked into your bill before, so that's really extortion.
Right. We were not paying for our meter readers to come out, but what they said was, this is now we read these wirelessly, so now this is a second way. This is a second whole system we have to set up. Now we have to have a meter reader come out, and they would. We were in the midst of several other proceedings where we were arguing, our organization, through our attorney, was arguing that they don't have to read it every month. They could read it sporadically and then do what's called true-ups. So they did accept that, and they said that now they're going to read it every other month. and they're going to estimate in between, based on your current usage. We've ordered them to do that to cut the cost, but still they're not lowering the cost. But anything above that, they're going to have be part of the general rates. It will, if let's say it costs more than the like $2 million that San Diego Gas and Electric says it will cost, or $1.5 million, I think they said. If anything be above and beyond that, which seems like a blank check to me for the utility, they can charge to the rest of the ratepayers. We wanted it all charged to the investors, the owners of the and investors of the utilities, because they're the ones causing the problem. But on an emergency basis, we wanted no fees like they have in Vermont. There are no fees. There were a lot of activists in Vermont that accomplished this, and they went to the state legislature, and the state legislature, not the PUC, state legislature enacted some legislation that mandated no fees, that anyone in Vermont can opt out for any reason and they don't pay a fee.
Sue, in your state, the opt-out, does that allow folks that may have had a smart meter installed to have it uninstalled and then opt out?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
So folks,
or if you hadn't had one installed, then when they came around to install it, you wouldn't have it installed.
Okay, and another thing I'd like to remind you, I'm sure you know this, but just so our listeners are aware of how fast this technology changes, and it is constantly changing, and the public is not in the loop on how it changes and what they're being exposed to. And because I have an RF radiation detector meter, I was able to see the difference in radiation emissions from the early model 40G compared to the 100G, and it's staggering. It's off the charts. So what I have personally experienced is that the utility company can upgrade their digital meters anytime they want, and the newer models can be a completely different beast compared to the original model. So if we, the public, are out fighting a battle with the PUC or in court to get one of these meters off our home, you might succeed. But then next month, they can install all around your home on other homes that didn't opt out a meter that's 100 times more powerful, so you're still getting high levels of radiation in your home. So that's another aspect to consider with this technology, that it's constantly changing, and they can do whatever they want anytime they want.
And that's very true. And there's the banks of meters also, which we just had a proceeding where we were supposed to be discussing the banks of meters, and they closed the proceeding down prematurely because they didn't want to discuss that. But the banks of meters, if you live in multifamily housing, like apartments or condos, townhouses, you may have, sometimes you might have 10 or 100 or 200 meters all in like a wall. And people get, who are in close proximity to that, the people who are closest to that are usually quite ill. Mm-hmm. And they don't have to have any pre-existing conditions to be ill from something like that.
That's huge.
It's exponential what they're exposed to. And what's really sad is that, the people who are living in the multifamily housing are often people with lower socioeconomic, status. They have, less money. They may be senior citizens, or they may be, who do have medical conditions to worry about, and pacemakers that can be interfered with by these things, and so on, and heart rhythm, and they're suffering. I mean, a great deal, and they really don't know what to do about it. And if they opt out, if there's 10 meters or 100 meters, and they opt out of theirs, that leaves 99 left.
Yeah.
And they don't know where to go. They can't afford to go out and buy or find rent a single-family home where they can get away from the neighbor's smart meters somewhat. Mm-hmm. That's what people are doing. They're becoming smart meter refugees. Yes. Some people are living in their cars. They can't even occupy their own homes. Mm-hmm. They may even be wealthy. I know quite a wealthy woman from La Jolla, California, had a beautiful big home, and she, as soon as they put the smart meters in, she just became electrosensitive, and she couldn't occupy her own house. So then she's sleeping at friends' houses and trying to find, places to go. And finally she had to move out of the whole area and find a place in Arizona that has, wide open spaces. But she had the money to do that. Mm-hmm. But, other people are just, I know of others that are, still maintaining their apartment, like they might even be on, have HUD housing, the very low income, but they have a car, or they have a car of a child. I think that there is an awareness, though, that people don't know about the smart meters, but there is an awareness that cell towers are not healthful, and that, a vague awareness, like I used to have about cell phones, that, it's not the greatest thing to hold it up to your head, and I could feel the heat if I did hold it up to my head. It would heat up, and make my ear hot or something, and I think that's not good. But, there's a vague awareness, but we do get addicted to these things so easily, and we kind of just turn off, like ignoring that cigarettes are bad, in the old days. Everybody's smoking, and you couldn't think it was good for you, but, you're just going to do it anyway. So, but people don't really, they had no clue that the smart meters, that the utility company could force, this kind of device on your house. And, the other things are voluntary, but this is forced on you. So if you can avoid it by getting your local government and your state to preempt this so you don't get one, or you can get it off, that really is the thing to do. And figure out where your meters are, figure out if they are smart meters, and if they are, don't have a couch that backs up to a living room wall where you're sitting with your head right next to that smart meter.
So there's a lot of reasons not to have a smart meter. And in wrapping up today, I'm really, really pleased that you joined us, because you brought to light so many strong points that our listeners really need to be aware of. And your website is just an extension of that. So if you would share with us where folks can go to learn more about you and what you do, and your websites.
Well, our website is Electrosmog Prevention, all one word, .org, electrosmogprevention.org. If I would say that, there's legal sections with examples of our legal briefs that were filed with the CPUC. There's a slideshow when you first go to the welcome page that has some main introductory articles which I would recommend everybody take a look at. One is about how to identify and avoid electrosmog. There's also StopSmartMeters.org and the EMF Safety Network. Actually, I'm forgetting what their website is, but there's a number of these. I do want to say one thing. Some of the organizations and websites are recommending that you remove the smart meter yourself and you replace it with an analog meter that you buy online, and you have someone do it who can do it without getting electrocuted, like an electrician. I do not subscribe to that at all, because first of all, I think that's dangerous. Second of all, it only lasts. You don't have the right under the law to do that, because that is actually the utility equipment and tampering with their equipment legally, and can bring legal proceedings against you, and actually criminal proceedings against a person who does that, if they so choose. And the other thing is that it only lasts maybe a week or two. The electric company, gas companies, they're going to come back out and they're going to put their meter right back on, because it's illegal to do that. And they may shut off your electricity and gas, your energy, because you did do that. And I know of people who have done that, and they've been cut off in the middle of the winter and, really suffered. If you're doing it as an act of civil disobedience and you want to do it and you realize that you're going to have all those consequences, and somehow you think that that's okay, well, I suppose a person could do that, but I would not subscribe to that, and I think it's, dangerous and unwise. In my opinion, it's better to take legal approaches and educational and legal approaches to the matter. And electrosmog, I think in the future, if we survive all this as a people, we'll reduce electrosmog at some point because we'll see that it could be producing autism, more cancer, a sicker population, and they'll say, what were those people thinking,
Mm-hmm. They will. There's no doubt about it. That time will come.
Let's hope it's sooner rather than later, huh?
Yeah.
I hope there's enough of us left to
exactly
to carry on.
Have our wits about us.
Yeah, absolutely.
DNA that isn't damaged.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's the main concern. Yeah.
Well, Sue, thank you for sharing you.
Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Well, thank you for joining us on Boil the Frog Slowly Radio. Please come back next week, and for more information, go to the website boilthefrogradio.com. And until next week, remember to practice safe phone.
Boil the frog slowly, you're a frog in a pot. Turn out the heat and things will get hot. Will you jump out or will you burn? Listen to the show and you will return to Boil the Frog slowly.